We welcome in our next guest who knows all about Ronald Reagan. He's Craig Shirley, president of Shirley and Bannister Public Affairs, author of the book Reagan's Revolution, the untold story of the campaign that started it all. Craig Shirley, good morning to you as you Skype in from Northern Virginia. I just got to ask you, do you agree with Ed Schultz that this is Mr. Obama being Reagan-esque? Tear down this wall?
As an historian, JD, and by the way, Merry Christmas to you and Miranda. As an historian, I can say there's probably nothing that I agree with that Ed Schultz has ever said. This is kind of American liberalism, is they take the little minute things and try to make them into giant earth-shaking events. Is that this is nowhere near. I mean, Reagan gave that speech at the height of the Cold War when millions of lives were at stake and land masses and countries were at stake. Is that there's really very, very little at stake here for the United States of America other than what we're giving up as opposed to not getting anything in return. This is a government that is, we have to remember, is not just a form of communism, but led by a man who actively plotted the assassination of at least one president, and for which we haven't even gotten an apology in return. Meanwhile, they'll get billions in foreign aid that'll be good for corporate America, but I'm not sure what's in it for the American people or the American taxpayer.
Well, Craig, the response to this move is certainly going to factor into the 2016 debates, and potential candidates have already started to weigh in. I want you to listen now to what Florida Senator Marco Rubio had to say about this.
Did they agree to freedom of press? No. Did they agree to free and unfettered access to the internet? No. Did they agree to elections? Absolutely not. Did they agree to independent political parties? No. Did they agree to freedom of assembly? No. What democratic opening are we getting here? None whatsoever. And so that's why I've said this president has to be the worst negotiator we've ever had. And he has betrayed those Cubans that have worked so hard and have sacrificed so much for the freedom and liberty of the island. So
do you agree with that, Craig? Is he the worst negotiator ever?
He is the worst negotiator ever. I mean, one GI in exchange for 8 Guantanamo detainees is, in case after case after case, he's demonstrated, especially with leaders of other countries, to be an extremely poor negotiator, maybe the worst negotiator since President Carter and his failed SALT II, which he stuck by even after the Soviets invaded Afghanistan and offered no suggestions, no changes, except a very weak boycott of the 1980 Olympics being held in Moscow that year. Is very, very troubling. And I think Marco Rubio hit the nail on the head, is that there's nothing in it for the Cuban people. There's nothing in it for the American people. It's good for corporate America, and it's good for Obama's short-term public relations. But what's in it for anybody else, I don't know.
Well, Craig, since you have quite the reputation as a historian, principally about Ronald Reagan, we know that back in 1980, the field was basically wide open to challenge Jimmy Carter, and it looks like there's going to be a wide open field in 2016. What tack do you believe Republican candidates will take on the issue of Cuba? Will we see just about everybody line up with what Marco Rubio had to say, or will there be some heterodoxy within the party, one or two taking a different tack?
That's an excellent question. I've been thinking about that ever since I learned the news last night. I do think it's going to become an issue in 2016, and deservedly so. This is a policy that was about principle. It wasn't necessarily about bringing down the Castro regime, because it's been in power for 50 some odd years, but it was a statement of principle about what and who we are as Americans. And I think that we need to have that debate inside the Republican Party and inside the Tea Party and the conservative movement, and splayed all over Newsmax and the conservative media, is that the Republicans running need to articulate, I think that, frankly, why this is a mistake, and a gigantic mistake, by Barack Obama. And it's not just a message it sends to the Castros. It's a message it sends to the world that basically America will give up everything and get nothing in return. And that's a debate worthy of having. Now, I think, to his credit, Marco Rubio has drawn a line in the sand, and any Republican aspiring for the nomination had better not cross that line.
For the bulk of your answer there, Craig, we were seeing scenes with former Florida Governor Jeb Bush, who, of course, has announced that he may one day announce for the presidency. And he took, likewise, a hard line on this, as did Senator Rubio. I'm curious, in the 2 minutes that remain, back in 2009, Governor Bush, or former Governor Bush, penned an op-ed where he said that, I think to put it politely, it's time to turn the page from Reaganism. Some interpret that to say, hey, you got to forget always holding up the Reagan legacy. Will that be fuel for the fire against a Jeb Bush candidacy? A minute and a half remains.
Yeah, but exactly. It is exactly what you say it is. But to turn the page to what? Toward Bushism? His father. I mean, we're not talking about the Bush family or the character of the Bush family. They're all good people, but that's not the point. Were they good, successful presidents? I think by common agreement, the answer was no. Reaganism is about a philosophy. It's just not about an individual. And by the way, a successful governing philosophy. And that should be the centrality of the debate for the 2016 nomination. And Jeb Bush had better understand that, or else he's going to be on the sideline very shortly in the contest.
Do you think he'll run?
Oh, there's no doubt about it. I think absolutely, Miranda. He's going to run, and I think there's something in him that wants to tell off Republican voters, and I think he's going to have to get that under control too.
What kind of financial impact do you think this will have on the other candidates? We have about 15 seconds.
His candidacy, I think, the money that he's competing for, the high dollar, kind of the K Street corporate money, is going to go up against Romney if he runs, and Chris Christie. Most of the other candidates, I suspect, are going to be more supported by, outsider small donors.
And we will have to leave it right there. Craig Shirley, we thank you. Craig, the author of Reagan's Revolution, the untold story of the campaign that started it all. Coming back following this Newsmax Now update.